Good evening and welcome back to my US election 2020 vlog. We're now 8 days on from polling night, so with apologies for the delay, I thought it was high time that I gave you an update, not just on the outcome of the race and the states which are still to be called, but to have a closer look at some of the numbers and what actually delivered Joe Biden his putative victory, although the president has not yet conceded. I'm sure you're familiar with this map. This is taken from CNN. A short time ago tonight, which is Wednesday, the 11th of November. The only change we've really had is that Alaska here has finally been called for Trump. It was never really in doubt. There are 3 states outstanding. I'm sure you're very, very familiar with these. North Carolina, which is tilting towards Trump. Georgia, tilting towards Biden, but it's already been announced that there'll be a full statewide recount in that state. So watch this space for the results. And Arizona, which again hasn't been called, but is tilting towards Biden. So I suspect that Arizona will go for Biden in the final analysis, as will Georgia, which is a big win, and North Carolina, which is a disappointment for Biden, will go to Trump. And if we move on to the numbers that you may well have been following, this spreadsheet projected, and this is based on the polling averages from 538.com as at the 2nd of November, which is the day before the election. It projected 351 electoral votes for Biden and 187 for Trump. And we also, if you'll recall, did a separate calculation which assumed that each state would be out by the amount that it was in 2016. So the vast majority of states in 2016 understated Trump's chances. If we assume that they all were wrong by the same amount this time round, that would have been the result, 335. So not a huge difference. Clearly, there are a couple of 3 states that still need to be called. However, where we are currently is President Trump is on 217, and the former Vice President Biden, President-elect now, is on 279. You may well have seen, even as fairly early on in the night, that the Democrats were quite disappointed with how things were going. They had wanted nothing less than an outright repudiation of Trumpism. That was not the case on the numbers. And indeed, Trump at one point, certainly in the small hours and through, I think, till lunchtime, UK time on the Wednesday, was the odds-on favourite. And then, of course, the early ballots came in slowly. And the tide slowly but surely changed towards Biden. And then he, within about a day, had assumed an odds-on position of about the same 3-1, which then massively increased when it became clear that he was almost certainly going to win. And it varied from anything between about 16-1 on to, in some cases, 100-1 on. But it's pretty clear to all, I think, apart from President Trump, that Biden has won. Trump's currently on 217, which is 30 more than he was projected to get. That is made up of Florida, 29 electoral votes, which is a big disappointment for Biden, and we'll talk about that shortly, plus the 2nd congressional district in Maine, which is worth 1 electoral vote, which was expected to go by a small margin for Biden, and in the event didn't. So moving on to the numbers, and these numbers I would stress are provisional in that they're not absolutely final, but in almost every case, the states have counted 99% or more of their numbers. So this might vary by a 0.1% here or there, but these are effectively the results. I've already mentioned that in 2016, with virtually no exceptions, in some states more than others, Clinton's support was overestimated and Trump's was underestimated. And what you'll see here, the positive numbers are cases where Trump's support was underrepresented based on the 538 poll of polls on the 2nd. And the negative percentages are the reverse, where his support was overstated. And what you'll see straight away is that the 2016 position, the general trend is repeated again. Pretty much every single state, with about 4 exceptions, Trump did better in than anticipated. There's a big variance in how much better he did across those states, from 10 in Kentucky. The one which I will talk about in a bit is New York, which was massively, he did massively better than expected, albeit still a 12.8%, so a comfortable win for the Democratic Party. Down to others like Pennsylvania, which clearly a pivotal state in this. He did 4% better than expected. Ohio, again, an important state, he did 7.3% better than expected. So that's the general picture. Now, of course, all states are not created equal. They all have different electoral votes apportioned to them. So that average, which is 5.51, is the average by which each state was out, if you like. The nationwide position was a little bit lower than that, mainly because of states where Biden did better, which had quite a few electoral votes. That takes him down his adverse percentage down a little bit, but he did 4.91% worse than the polls. And those of you who will have followed this blog closely will have known that it was thought by a number of experts and me that because at the moment the most pivotal states that decide this election and have decided the last couple and are likely to decide the next couple are more rightward leaning than the national average, Trump at the moment, or the grand old party, the Republicans, have an inbuilt advantage in the Electoral College. And the thinking was that really Biden needed to win nationally by around 2.5, 3 to have a chance of winning, by about 5% to be comfortable. Clinton famously won the popular vote last time by around 2.1%, but lost the Electoral College by around 70 electoral votes. The reason for that was that Trump eked out wafer-thin margins in key states, and Clinton had a large amount of wasted votes, effectively, in states which she carried easily. A similar thing has happened this time. However, Biden has critically done better where it really counts. And we'll see that. If you look at these numbers, the so-called blue wall, which Trump broke through last time, some people have said it's been rebuilt. I'd say it's been rebuilt with provisional foundations, if you like. It's by no means secure going forward. Michigan, Trump did 7.3% better than expected, but he lost it by 0.60%. Pennsylvania, a little bit better for Biden. He won it by 0.7, but still 4% worse than he was expected to do. And Wisconsin, a massive 7.8% worse than he expected to do. And he only held it by 0.6. And another key state which was projected for Biden all the way through this, Florida, Trump did 5.9% better there than expected, flipped that state, big disappointment. Georgia, which it looks as though Biden will win, which is a big deal because that's a deeply Republican state over the last few cycles. It was ironically very heavily Democratic until the 60s. Even there, Trump's done better than expected. So, you know, that is the position. Biden has done enough to win this election, but I don't think that he has restored the order in any kind of secure way. And if we look at numbers versus 2016, this is a very rough estimate. What I've done here is calculate, I've taken how he's done this time versus the Clinton percentage, which is here, and the Trump in red here. And in the key ones, if we'll just take, let's take Pennsylvania, for example. Bear with me. Come past it, sorry. Up here. And he's won it by 0.7. She lost it by 0.7. So Wisconsin, he's won it by 0.6. She lost it by 0.77. And he actually did worse in Florida. Now, in Florida, the alarm bells were there quite early on because he did worse than Clinton in Miami-Dade, which is one of the first one of the first areas to declare, and it was clear that he was doing worse there than he had before, and the same applied in other counties as well. The theory is that he did not connect as well as Clinton did with the broad Latino vote. So I'm not talking about Cubans because they are slightly different. They tend to vote more Republican. Having left a communist regime, that's hardly surprising. But he did noticeably worse with the Latinos. And he also didn't do as well with women as Clinton. And in fact, also another interesting demographic group is that not exclusively, but to an extent, young, so let's say under 45 black males, supported Trump more than they did last time. And this is what cost, those factors altogether is what cost Biden Florida. Trump was also able to run up the numbers to a greater extent than he did before in the rural districts of Florida, and also in the Panhandle, the section in the Central Time Zone, which is traditionally more Republican. However, what really cooked Biden's goose in Florida was not doing as well in heavily Democratic counties as Clinton did. So at that point, people thought, well, he's lost Florida by more than Clinton did. He's got no chance. But true to his word, and he came out and said, I'm a boy from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I can connect more with white working class males in particular, who were famously the ones who deserted the Democrats in droves last time. He said, I can connect with those guys and girls. And he did just enough to do that. He I think only flipped 2 counties in the whole of Pennsylvania, but he managed to claw back enough of that demographic in the upper Midwest. So in the 3 states of Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, to flip them by just enough to win. If you look at what I was saying about the amount by which he won, he won by 3.5%, which is almost 5% less nationwide than he's expected to get. And these estimates here, these are crude. They've been here since the beginning. These assume a uniform swing, so they're clearly not to be relied on too much. But it became clear that you get down to about 3%, it's getting close. 4%, there wasn't really a lot of difference. I think one congressional district was tracking between 3 and 4 at the time for Biden, so a 4% swing would have taken that to Trump. Get down to 5% nationally, and it was almost 5%, the swing versus the polls. Biden was projected to lose, but lose he did not, and the reason for that is that in effect he gave Trump a taste of his own medicine. He got back those states which Trump won by very thin margins. So I wouldn't say it was a convincing victory at all, but he did just about enough here to win. One of the other truisms that came out of the coverage was that in very close elections, the suburbs decided, and Biden did far better in the suburbs of the big cities than Clinton. You'll see here, this is from The Guardian, and this shows areas that swung to the Democrats versus areas that swung to the Republicans. And quite a lot of middle America, the rural areas, did swing more to the Republicans, but Trump already held those areas. It's a big, big trend here of suburban shift to Biden. And that is really what did it for him. Another thing that's worth looking at is the 2024 electoral map, because we have a census in the States. Well, why not? American states have a census this year. And based on that, the next 2 cycles, 2024 and 2028, will have their electoral votes apportioned to them. Now, these numbers are not final, and there is some conjecture. I've seen a couple of sources that have forecast that New York State will lose 2. But I think what is generally accepted is that the Rust Belt, so the states which, excluding Ohio, the states which Biden clawed back this time, are all scheduled to lose one. And these colours are wrong because these are pre-election, so these aren't all as they were as at this election. But the big winners are Florida and Texas. And Texas, in fact, gained four electoral votes after the 2010 census. So that state is electorally becoming very important. I mean, it was already, it's always been one of the biggest states, but its share is becoming even greater. And Florida, again, we've talked about the disappointment there and how the Democrats didn't do as well as they expected and the problems they may have. Well, certainly Biden as a candidate had there. That state is due to become more important. So the paradox here is that the blue wall has up to a point been rebuilt, but the blue wall is actually, it will still be very, very important, possibly critical, but a touch less so. And in a very tight election, these differences in vote share could make the difference, which is why I think Texas is going to be a huge prize next time. We've already talked about this in this vlog. Biden didn't, unfortunately, do as well as was expected, but I mean the state is far more marginal than it used to be. North Carolina is gaining one. Again, I think increasingly that's going to move into the left. It's a big, big prize. Arizona, we've seen how tight that is this time. That's gaining one as well. In fact, it's tilting Democratic now, not Republican red, as this graphic shows. So I think we can probably say that Biden was the right candidate in that he did what he said he was going to do. He said, I can win back those states that Clinton lost in 2016. I can connect with those voters. Was he really a popular candidate? Possibly not. I mean, Hillary Clinton was a deeply divisive figure, and 2016 is really the election where both candidates were very, very unpopular with a lot of Americans. Is Trump more popular than he was before? His net votes increased, as did the Democrats, and he increased some support in Middle America. But no, he's not more popular than he was then. I think he's got a devoted band of supporters, which means that he could well run in 2024. However, Biden was less unpopular than Clinton, and he was, although by no means the poster boy of the upper Midwest in the Rust Belt, he was able to do enough there to claw it back. I won't go through this in great detail, but if you refer to that Guardian article that I was talking about earlier, which shows the graphic that we saw on the screen, that goes into more detail about exactly what happened on the night and subsequently. So really, I think that's everything that I was going to mention today. I haven't talked about the tipping point yet. As the numbers currently stand, this is only provisional. But in fact, Pennsylvania, which was long favoured to be the tipping point state, and this isn't necessarily the order in which they're called, as mentioned before, this is the descending order, how comfortable the win was. The state which actually is forecast to take him over the edge, Biden, is to Wisconsin. So those three states which we've talked about are key. But I think some of the concern that the Democrats will have going forward is Ohio, which is typically a bellwether state, and Trump became the first candidate since JFK to win Ohio, but to lose the election. That's gone a lot further to the right. The margin there was 7 or 8%. Iowa, Indiana. So again, upper Midwest states that aren't too dissimilar from Pennsylvania, Wisconsin and Michigan. Another thing that's very interesting is New York. The Democrats hemorrhaged support there. They did 22% worse. Sorry, I'm looking at one. It wasn't 22%, but they did 16.6% worse. And the Grand Old Party, the Republicans, had a great night in New York, in the Senate as well as presidentially. Obviously, they didn't take the state for presidential purposes, but that could be an area of concern. Maybe not in the next cycle, but the one after. Texas is a massive electoral prize. Florida seems to be moving to the right. New York is a huge electoral prize, even though it's going down by 1 or 2 this time. It's still going to be 27. California, still pretty comfortable there. But I think there's all to play for next time. You know, the Rust Belt is by no means secure. Florida seems to be moving to the right. The Democrats are now competitive in Texas, but still got a bit of work to do. Georgia is going to be a toss-up. North Carolina is going to be a toss-up. Arizona is going to be a toss-up. And I think those are some of the trends that will come out in 2024. Who knows who the candidates will be. One of the theories is that Biden has chosen Kamala Harris with 2024 in mind, given his age. She is clearly a woman of color and the first woman of color actually to be on a major ticket, and only I think it's the third woman after Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton. So a lot of work to do. And I think we will need to watch that space. I will update this probably with a final vlog once we have the numbers in from those 3 outstanding states. But I think what is clear is that, you know, Biden could quite easily have lost this. He did just enough to win where it mattered. But this is by no means the comfortable victory that was projected and hoped for. And on that basis, the Democrats have got a lot of work to do if they want to hold on to the White House in 2024. Thanks very much for watching. Comments and upvotes, of course, always welcome. And I shall see you one more time, hopefully sometime soon. Good night.